The movie The Door in the Floor is a drama romance film that was released in 2004. The story takes place in a beach house on an island, where a successful author named Ted lives with his wife Marion and their daughter Ruth. The house is filled with pictures of their two sons, Tom and Timmy, who tragically died in a car accident a few years prior. Marion is still struggling with the shock and depression from their deaths, while Ted is focused on his work. Ruth is taken care of by her babysitter, Alice, and is aware of the accident that killed her brothers. One day, Ted hires an assistant named Eddie to help with small tasks and to drive him, as his license was canceled 3 months earlier. He tells Marion about Eddie, and they have a conversation about the distance in their relationship since the loss of their sons. Ted suggests that they take some time away from each other, and Marion agrees. On the same night, Ruth has a scary dream and goes to Ted for comfort. Ted tells her a story and puts her to sleep. He then begins to write a book based on Ruth's dream. The next morning, Marion goes to pick up Eddie, who is starting his job as Ted's assistant. When Eddie sees Marion instead of Ted, he is immediately attracted to her. Marion takes him to Ted's house and then goes back to her hotel. Ted meets with Eddie and explains his duties as an assistant. He also tells him that he will be living in the house from now on. Eddie is excited to be working with Ted, as he admires him and wants to become a successful writer like him. Ted shows him around the house and talks about his deteriorating marriage with Marion, who are currently living apart from each other. As the story progresses, it is revealed that Marion stays at the hotel for a day, so that Ruth can spend time with both of her parents. Eddie also meets Ruth's babysitter, Alice, who is a nice girl. Along with writing books, Ted also paints and hires a model named Evelyn to pose for him. He often paints pictures of young girls in revealing clothing. One day, Marion comes to the house and Eddie follows her to the theater. She tells him that she came to have dinner because she does not get fed well at home. That same night, when Eddie comes back to the house, he starts pleasuring himself while looking at a photo of Marion. But he is caught by Ted and Ruth, and narrowly escapes getting caught. The next day, Eddie follows Marion to the beach and watches her in a bikini. Later, he comes home and sees her undergarments. He starts pleasuring himself again, but is caught by Marion. She apologizes for catching him and tells him that she is not angry with him and that at his age everyone does it. Eddie tells her that he has been thinking about her since the day he met her. Marion remains silent after hearing Eddie's confession. The next day, when Eddie drops Ted off at Evelyn's house, he sees that Marion has left her undergarments there for him. That evening, Marion goes out to dinner with Eddie and they have a conversation about why he doesn't take Alice out on a date. Eddie tells her that Alice is not interested in him. After talking for a while, they come back home. The next day, Marion goes to Eddie's room and tells him the story behind all the photos on the walls. During this conversation, she seduces him and they become intimate. The next day, Ted goes out with Eddie and reads his book to a group of people. Eddie learns that Ted writes his books based on his own life. When they return home, Ted thanks Eddie for his presence, as since he's arrived, Marion has been happier than she has been in a long time. A few days later, one night, Ruth comes into Marion's room and sees Eddie and Marion being intimate. Ruth starts crying when she sees Eddie and Marion being intimate. Marion comforts her. Ted finds out about the affair and talks to Eddie about it the next day. Ted tells Eddie that he wants him to testify on his behalf in the divorce case and that he wants custody of Ruth. Eddie asks Marion why she is still with Ted, to which she replies that Ted is a good father and takes care of Ruth. She also mentions that she hates him for painting habit and for making nude pictures of her. Some days pass, and one night, Eddie asks Marion about the accident that killed their sons. Marion becomes emotional and doesn't answer. On the same night, while showing pictures to Ruth, she drops one and hurts her finger. Eddie and Marion take her to the doctor. Ted scolds Eddie for giving the pictures to Ruth. He realizes that after the divorce, Ruth should stay with Marion because she will be happy there. The next day, while Marion is being intimate with Eddie, she starts crying and tells him that she's leaving soon. Ted hires Eddie to return all the paintings to Evelyn, because he is now fixated on her. When Eddie goes to Evelyn's house, she becomes angry and tells him that Ted needs to come see her on Friday. While Eddie is leaving, Evelyn accidentally locks herself out of the house, and he breaks into the window to help her. In the evening, Marion informs Eddie that on Friday he will drop Ted off at Evelyn's house, but will not bring him back. This way, Ted will have to come home alone, and Marion will be able to leave with all the pictures of her sons. The next day, Eddie drops Ted off at Evelyn's house and she is angry, tearing all the paintings sent by Ted. Eddie comes back home and sends Ruth to the doctor with him, so that she will not be there when Marion leaves. Meanwhile, Evelyn follows Ted's life and tries to hit him with her car, but he runs to the beach. Eddie goes to a picture shop to get a broken picture fixed and asks for it, because he knows that when Ruth comes home, she will be upset if she doesn't see her mother and the picture. The manager refuses to give it to him, but after Eddie writes to them and explains the situation, including his and Marion's affair, the manager agrees and gives him the picture. Ted manages to run away and ends up at a bookstore where he has many friends. He starts signing autographs and his attention is drawn to two young girls who are his big fans. He asks them if they can drop him off at his house. The girls take him to their house first, where he changes his clothes. He then tells the girls and their mother that he wants to paint them, to which they happily agree. With the help of the girls, Ted returns home early and sees Marion leaving. He says nothing to her, and she leaves for New York. Some time later, Eddie comes back to the house with Ruth. Ted is angry with Eddie and hits him in the nose. Eddie tells Ted that Marion has left forever and taken all the pictures of her sons. Ted fires Eddie from his job and asks him to leave the next day. After Marion's departure, it becomes difficult for Ted to take care of Ruth, and her babysitter, Alice, leaves her job. Ted is sad about all this and tells Eddie about how their children died in an accident. They were drunk and the driver was not experienced, resulting in a collision with a truck. To ease the pain, Marion gave birth to Ruth, but it did not change anything. Eddie is saddened by the story and does not understand why Marion would leave her daughter. The next day, Evelyn's servant comes to see Ted and tells him that Evelyn fired him. Ted hires him as a driver and hires his wife as a cook and Ruth's babysitter. Eddie then goes back home and says goodbye to Ted. Evelyn's servant and his wife take good care of Ruth. This is the end of the movie.